Hey everybody, welcome to a very special Purple Insider feature. And if you enjoy this, remember to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends too. What a year for the Minnesota Vikings to need a quarterback. Have you seen this draft class? We've got generational talents, record setters, Heisman winners, national champions. Oh man, there's talent everywhere. Following Kirk Cousins' decision to sign with the Atlanta Falcons at a reasonable price, the Vikings now enter the NFL draft with all sorts of options at the most important position in sports. You could say that you can't draw it up any better for the Vikings. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's get on the chalkboard and take a closer look at this quarterback class and the opportunity the Vikings have in the draft to take a first rounder for the first time since 2014 and only the fifth time in team history. By the way, 3 of them turned out to be pretty good, and we'll just erase the other recent one from our memories when we talk about picking quarterbacks in the draft. For the Vikings, we probably don't need to talk about USC star Caleb Williams. It's about as likely as a 70-degree day in Minnesota winter that Williams will be taken anywhere else except number 1 in the draft by the Chicago Bears. But since he is likely joining the division, here's a quick nugget on the player dubbed a quote generational talent. No quarterback in college football last season had more turnover-worthy plays when under pressure, as tracked by PFF, than Caleb Williams. 51 quarterbacks, including everyone projected at the top of this year's draft, scored higher than Williams' PFF grade of 41.4 when under pressure. It might be good information for Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores to know that his newest competition melts in the heat. Anyway, the quarterback projected as the best fit for the Minnesota Vikings is Drake Maye from North Carolina. Here's where we're going to start with Maye. He's very large. He's 6'4" 3/8", which puts him in the 83rd percentile of quarterbacks and 223 pounds. He's basically the same size as Eli Manning, only he's faster than Eli Manning, but we'll get to that in a moment. While there are some smaller quarterbacks these days scooting around the NFL, size still matters in football. 13 of the 16 top quarterbacks by PFF grade last year were at least 6'2". Maye also has a cannon, a rocket, a howitzer, and he knows how to use it. Maye had the 11th highest depth of target in college football at 11 yards per attempt, meaning he was pushing the ball downfield consistently. When Maye was throwing 20-plus yards in the air over the middle of the field over the last 2 years, he went 37 for 73, with 34 of those qualifying as big-time throws by PFF. Now that sounds like something Justin Jefferson might like. Over the last 2 seasons, Jefferson was targeted on throws over 20 yards 51 times, and he caught 31 of them for over 1,000 yards. Another thing to like about Maye is that the UNC offense was all on his shoulders. Only 11.5% of his passes were screens, and just 316 of his 3,608 yards were created via the screen pass. His offensive line ranked 39th by PFF, and the Tar Heels graded as the 55th best receiving team in college football. But when things went wrong for Drake Maye, they either went very wrong or he made them right with his legs. He completed only 43% of his passes under pressure and took 29 sacks, but he ran for 582 yards and averaged 6.3 yards per attempt while taking off. That's not something you see that often from a fella his size. Altogether, Maye's size, arm, and athleticism have drawn comparisons to quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, Carson Palmer, and Justin Herbert, and at 21 years old, he seems like just the type of prospect that Kevin O'Connell could mold into a star. On to our next prospect. It's hard to watch his tape because he's moving so darn fast. Jayden Daniels of LSU burst onto the scene this year, scoring 50 total touchdowns and winning the Heisman Trophy. You want to talk about somebody who does special things with his legs? Daniels led all of college football in rushing yards for quarterbacks and yards per attempt at 10.4 yards per carry. The last guy to average 10-plus yards per carry was back in 2017, and no, it wasn't even Lamar Jackson. He was nearly 2 yards per rush behind Jayden Daniels when Jackson was in college. But don't call Daniels a running quarterback. His 92.0 passing PFF grade was the second highest in college football. This man not only threw 40 touchdowns, but he also protected the ball extremely well, creating turnover-worthy plays on just 1.6% of his throws. That was the fourth best in college football. He also led the NCAA in yards per pass attempt at 11.5 per throw, and to put that in context, nobody in 2022 cleared 10 yards per attempt. This man was the Tasmanian Devil. So what's the downside? Well, he played like Wile E. Coyote at times as well. Daniels took sacks on 20.2% of his dropbacks when he was pressured, and that's a similar number to the following recent draft picks: Justin Fields, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, and Zach Wilson. Well, let's not go crazy over those stats though. Daniels would be the most exciting and dynamic Vikings quarterback since Dante Culpepper. His current comparables include Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. Where things get very interesting is if the Vikings can't get May or Daniels. Michigan's J.J. McCarthy is the presumptive fourth best quarterback prospect, but not everybody agrees. See, McCarthy's top prospect status takes a magnifying glass to find. McCarthy only ranked 35th in passing yards, 37th in touchdowns, 29th in big-time throw percentage, and 47th in turnover-worthy plays. He wasn't a prolific runner either, with only 340 yards on the ground. But the prospect is in the details. McCarthy averaged 9.9 yards per attempt when opponents blitzed him, and when he used play action, McCarthy turned into Tom Brady, posting a 131.7 quarterback rating. And he doesn't lack physical tools either. He threw the ball 62 miles an hour at the combine, 1 mile per hour behind Josh Allen, and his 6.82 three-cone drill was the fifth quickest of any player. Not any quarterback, any player at the combine. At 21 years old, it's all about upside with McCarthy. That's why the comparables are all over the place. From Joe Burrow to a faster Kirk Cousins to Matt Hasselbeck to Alex Smith, the draft analysis world can't decide if he has got marvelous upside or if he's going to be a glorified game manager. Our final two prospects are projected much lower on the draft board. Mock Draft Database's consensus board lists Bo Nix from Oregon at 33rd and Michael Penix from Washington at 39th. That doesn't mean the Vikings won't take them though. Both have been projected at different times by top analysts as being first-round worthy. So here's the thing with both players. Their numbers were downright ridiculous in 2023. Bo Nix was as sharp with his passing as the corners of his flat-top hair. The man threw 45 touchdowns to 3 interceptions and produced a 92.7 PFF passing grade, the highest in all of college football. He was only sacked 6 times, six times. 160 college quarterbacks were sacked more than Bo Nix. Of course, that was because his team threw a lot of screen passes. 28% of his throws were behind the line of scrimmage. Still though, 29 of his touchdowns were thrown over 10 yards in the air, and he remarkably still passed the ball in under 3 seconds when throwing over 20 yards downfield. So why isn't this guy the number 1 overall pick with those numbers? Well, because he is a man, a full-grown man. Nix will be 24 by next season, and he isn't as big as Drake May or as fast as Jaden Daniels, and he doesn't really have a cannon either. He gets compared to Derek Carr and Sam Howell rather than the legends like our other prospects. Of course, physical tools don't always equate to success, as Super Bowl quarterback Brock Purdy might suggest. Now on to Penix Jr. Remember when we ogled at Drake May's arm? Well, this guy, Penix, he blew away everyone throwing the ball at the NFL Combine, which should not be a shock since he led all of college football in passing yards with 4,906 in 15 games. He produced 43 big-time throws, most in the NCAA, 8 in front of the next best quarterback. And he somehow only took 12 sacks on 577 dropbacks. How could anyone be down on this guy? Well, injuries for one. He's a medical chart in himself with multiple shoulder and knee surgeries, and as he gets sent into a scrambler's world in the NFL, he only scrambled 8 times in 2023. His 80 rushing yards all season would make Drew Bledsoe and Jared Goff blush. Of course, if he becomes a Bledsoe or Goff, well, those guys took teams to the Super Bowl. The Vikings haven't been there in a long, long time.
Still waiting.
That's the bottom line for our 2024 quarterback class. Every one of these guys has a statistical flaw that might scare you into uttering the name of that 2011 Vikings QB pick who didn't work out, but every one of them has a lot of numbers that suggest that they could be successful as well. Which one will be the next great NFL quarterback? Which will fall apart because of their weaknesses? We don't know. The NFL doesn't know. Heck, this is a league that picked Mitch Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes and Sam Darnold over Josh Allen. But here's what we do know. You can't win the lottery unless you play. So it's time for the Vikings to play and try to make the most of the talents that they have. Until then, we'll wait until draft night and find out who the next Vikings quarterback will be.